I'd like you to imagine your dream life. See the version of you who has what you want to have, feels how you want to feel, and is who you want to be. I'm Brittany Hoopes, your hypnotherapist and manifestation coach, and this is the show where I'll teach you to master the full power of your mind, to guide you on your journey towards destination manifestation.
Take a step back for the ones who can't do
This
that.
is Destination Manifestation, a podcast about using the power of your mind to manifest your dream life. We got stories, lessons, exercises, guided visualizations, and conversations designed to help you align to your goals. Hosted by me, Brittany Hoopes. Hello, welcome back. Here we are. If you're already subscribed to the show, of course, you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's so nice to have you here as part of this journey that we're all on to manifest, right? And today I want to start out by asking you a question. Okay, so are you ready? Do you know your life's purpose? Do you? Do you know what lights your soul on fire? What makes you feel like you're creating meaning in and with your life? How you're meant to spend your precious moments in this lifetime? Do you know? Now, I can say feeling disconnected and unaware of this inner knowing, that can be a truly soul-crushing experience. And living a life that's in alignment with your purpose can be transformational. And lucky for you guys, I have experience doing both. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I have years of experience also helping my clients to move from the former to the latter. Now, I will say this. I've never actually shared this before, so I'm excited. But in this episode, we're going to dive deep into how you can discover your life's purpose and what it means to live in alignment with your life's purpose and more. So let me take you back to the before times, okay? The many, many years where I had no freaking clue what I thought my life's purpose would or even should be. Maybe you can relate here, okay? So to tell you the truth, very early on in life, I thought I knew. I thought I knew my purpose. And that thought, when I share that, can kind of freak people out, I imagine, right? Like, what if you think you know your life's purpose, but actually you're wrong? Because that's what happened to me, all right? And if you're anything like me, the universe will bring it to your attention. So don't worry. You see, I thought for many years when I was younger that my life's purpose was to be an actress. Now, let me just say this. Let me just point this out. Let's pause here for a second, okay? That was a very narrow definition of a life's purpose. Now, there are zero rights or wrongs with how you live your purpose. You do you, right? But I will say that in my experience and what I've seen with so many of my clients, a life's purpose tends to not be defined by any one career or by any one singular action, okay? It tends not to be so narrow. We are infinite beings. We came to this earth for so much more than just to do one action again and again and again. You know what I mean? I'll talk more about this in a second, but first I just wanted to point out that kind of fatal flaw, right? If I had known that, I would have probably realized what I thought was my life's purpose was actually off track. I would have realized it a whole lot sooner. I thought my life's purpose from, I would say, about the age of around 5 years old to 22. Okay. So for a good amount of growing up, I thought my life's purpose was to be an actress. You see, when I was 5, I'll tell you guys a story. When I was 5, I have memories of watching. Do you remember that show Barney and Friends? If you're a millennial, I'm sure, or if you parented a millennial, I'm sure you know this old show, right? And I wanted to be on that show. And I can't believe I can remember her name, but there was a main human character, not a dino, named Kathy. Okay. I wanted to be Kathy. Little Kathy. I wanted to be Kathy. And if I couldn't be Kathy, I wanted to be Baby Bop. But that was going to be harder because I'm pretty sure she was a dinosaur too. But Kathy, she would fall asleep smiling. So if you're watching the YouTube or the video, she's falling asleep like this. Ah. Her eyes are closed. She's smiling. And I remember having memories. Little 5-year-old little Brittany me would literally practice in the bathroom mirror, falling asleep smiling and seeing if I could do it. Because I thought to be an actress, you must have to do that. And the problem was I couldn't really see if I looked like her or not because, my eyes were closed and I was, pretending to sleep. And I thought if I could learn to fall asleep while I was smiling, I could be on TV too. Which is so funny because now, knowing Big Brother, I did fall asleep, not smiling, never smiling, but many people watch me fall asleep every single day on the 24/7 live feeds on Big Brother. So sort of manifested that. And then when I was 8 years old, I auditioned for my first community theater play. It was Alice in Wonderland. And I think I got a call back. I remember being very excited. I got a call back for Tweedledee or Tweedledum, one of the two. And I didn't get the part, but I did get an offer to be an extra in the play. And of course, I was a little snot and I decided not to be an extra. I wanted a main part. And so I said no. Classic Brittany. No. So I didn't do the show. Great. But I will say it wasn't until I was actually 10 years old, when I was in 5th grade, that my best friend at school, she told me about a local theater where she was doing an after-school acting camp. And I remember I couldn't get home soon enough. I remember just rushing home and I was so excited. I was begging my mom if I could do it. And then the rest was pretty much history. I then performed 20 shows at this local theater. I was a camp counselor at that acting camp eventually. I got all the leading roles throughout middle school and high school in theater. I was one of 16 people in the state of Georgia to be selected for this prestigious theater program. I went to NYU for theater. I did indie film and off-Broadway theater in New York City until eventually I came up for breath and realized, do I even want this? That was never a question that I asked myself that entire time, nearly 2 decades. And that thought was terrifying because you see, I had committed yet another fatal flaw here, which was I made my life's purpose my identity. Yeah, I defined myself, my self-concept through this action of acting. And this was the only identity that really I had ever really known. I mean, since I was 5 years old, I didn't have much of an identity before then. What child does? So even though I questioned if it was something I wanted to do anymore, I didn't really know how to do anything else or how to really be anyone else. I didn't know who I was or who else I could be without it. My identity was defined as an actress. It was defined by my ability to act. I mean, I was voted most likely to make it to Hollywood in my senior yearbook. My room all growing up was decorated with theater playbills and theater masks. I literally had my name up in lights in my room growing up. I'm realizing now as I say this, it sounds pretty ridiculous, but it was it was decorated, right? It was theater themed, right? I'm such a theater kid. My parents were super supportive of what I wanted to do. So when anyone like friends or family ever asked about me, all they talked about was what show I was in or what role I had just received, which was understandable. Okay. It was very nice, but it did reinforce that that was who I was. And that was the value I contributed. So I was defined kind of by this narrow box, and I was really good at that box. So why in the world would I decide to leave this beautiful little box? And I'll tell you the truth, most people don't. And let me say this, if you love the box, that's great. Stay there. If it makes you happy, that's awesome. Set up shop in the box. Okay. But it didn't make me happy. At least not anymore. It felt like it was stunting and containing my growth. Can you relate? So there was a period of time where I was no longer acting, and that was such a hard decision to make. Oh my gosh, I remember losing a lot of sleep. But I decided to no longer act and no longer to pursue acting professionally. But I hadn't found my life's purpose yet. And that period of time was rough. I mean, especially since I defined my life's purpose as a career, I had to find a new career, and my college degree, my skill set, everything I had worked for, it just didn't seem to really apply anymore. And that was scary. So at first I tried to work at a talent agency. I worked in a voiceover talent agency. Thinking, oh, well, if it's not acting, at least I'll be familiar with, the industry, the entertainment industry. But I will tell you, the entertainment industry is not for me. At least my experience was incredibly toxic. I could really barely tolerate that industry as an actress, let alone being behind the scenes. I wanted nothing to do with it. So after a year of that, I was out. And then I really spent nearly the rest of my 20s trying to figure out, if my purpose isn't to be an actress, then what is it? And it's really kind of random. I eventually just grew a whole other career in market research. I still don't really know how that happened. It just kind of ended up that way. I became a researcher, and I'll tell you this is cringy, but I even tried to apply my research skills to my life's purpose. I came across this, which is one of the inspirations for this episode, but I came across an action plan on my computer the other day where I had conducted a research project in my free time, mind you. This was not for work, but in my free time, I conducted a research project where I tried to logically discover my life's purpose through research. Needless to say, you can't left brain your purpose, okay? It doesn't work that way. The research project, I started it and it was quickly abandoned, okay? Didn't lead me anywhere. Now, let me tell you. Some people, when they aren't aware of their purpose, they feel aimless. Like everyone else has it figured out. And then you're just sitting there and you're waiting and you're doing nothing of purpose. And that can hurt. I mean, that can be terrifying to feel like you aren't spending your precious moments on earth doing something that's contributing to your reason for being here. Some people spend 8 hours of their day doing a job just for money or stability, just for that brief chance of those 2 or 3 measly hours at night where they can do something that makes them feel happy, that makes them feel alive. But usually they just end up feeling too tired to use those hours for anything purpose related. So they have to start that cycle all over again the next day, right? They find themselves binging, let's say Big Brother or some other reality show, vicariously living through other people because they're too tired to go out and live life for themselves. Okay. And I can say this because I was one of those people for a very, very, very long time. So I understand. I was there. I was sitting on that couch, right? And meanwhile, they beat themselves up for not utilizing their free time towards something worthwhile. And it's not a judgment on what is worthwhile, but it's a recognition that that's not how they want to be spending their life. Okay. And that's a very different thing. We can have that recognition. And ultimately, it kind of just feels like you're playing this sick game where you're a rat within a maze and the door only stays open for 2 to 3 hours before it closes. And then you have to log in another 8 more hours before it will open again. It feels nearly impossible to break free. It's torture. Okay. I can tell you because I lived it. Some people feel like there's a group of people who are meant to be on stage, meaning they're meant to do big things out in this world. And then all the other people are just kind of meant to watch, right? Meant to consume whatever those people on stage are creating. They're not doing the things. They're just consuming what the successful people create. And yet, those in the audience, there are some of them there that feel like they should be on that stage. They know they could be. But instead, they're stuck in the crowd and they don't know how to get up and get out and get on the stage. And I get it. Okay, all of this sucks, but I'm going to share with you how to get out of the rat race and on to finding your life's purpose. Okay, I'm going to show you how you can stand up from that crowd and say, yeah, I'm meant to be up there. And you walk up on stage and you live your life. You live your purpose. Now, we say the term finding your life's purpose, but it's actually not so much about finding it, but it's about putting yourself out there. Okay, putting yourself out there in your life so that it can find you. It's kind of like a soulmate. That's what I like to think of. But instead of being a person, it's a soul mission. Rather than someone you spend your time with that makes your heart sing, it's more about the broader actions that you spend your time doing that make your life sing, right? Or the result that you create through that action. That's even more poignant. Or even who you become. Okay? There's no one set definition to a purpose. That's what's so beautiful about it. You get to create it. And to tell you the truth, I don't even directly know how I came to define my life's purpose. It's not like there was this big aha moment. I just kind of looked up one day and realized, oh, shit, I'm living it. Yay, figure that one out. Instead of searching and trying and doing research projects and all these other things, I lived a life that was just interesting to me, a life that I loved. And I realized that it had defined me. You know, it was funny. I think a mentor of mine asked me, what is your life's purpose? And all of a sudden I actually had an answer. That's how I knew. And that thought kind of tickled me because all those memories of all those years where I didn't have that answer just kind of came flooding back to me. But now I had an answer and now I was living it. And so do you want to hear what it is? Okay, here's my current definition. I realized that my life's purpose is to be a guide. To be a guide to my clients, to be a guide to my future children, to be a guide for anyone who wants to learn from and use the knowledge I've collected, the experiences I've collected, the techniques I've honed, my skills, anyone who needs guidance. I'm there. I'm a guide. To be a guide, even for you with this podcast. My purpose is to guide, plain and simple. Now, you see what's funny about this? If you're familiar with human design any at all, right? I'm a projector, and projectors are known to be natural guides. It's kind of funny because I came up with my life's purpose, or I recognized my life's purpose well before I learned about human design. And so when I learned about what my design was, I was like, of course, like this coincides with my life purpose so beautifully. It's just who I am. And it reaffirmed what I came to already know. So now notice how my purpose is to be a guide, but it isn't to be like a tour guide or even to be a hypnotherapist and coach, which is a form of a guide like I am now. Okay. To be a guide can take on so many different definitions. And even as I think back to my old acting days, I think I was living a certain definition of that purpose without even recognizing it. I was guiding an audience on an emotional experience, right? On an evening that they wouldn't forget. And that's what's so amazing. I found so much overlap with my past in theater and acting, and even with what I do now, which is like kind of like nuts to, at first I thought being a hypnotherapist, I'm like, oh, that's so random. How did I end up there? But actually there are so many similarities. In fact, I mentioned I went to NYU. When I trained at NYU, I was part of the Lee Strasberg Institute. That's the style of acting, method acting you might have heard of, right? And now I know so much more about how the brain works, about neuroscience, about psychology, about hypnotherapy. I know now how dangerous method acting can actually be. Okay. This is kind of an aside, but there is a reason. There's a reason why so many method actors have addictions and have died so young in life. Method acting has so many similarities with hypnosis and with reprogramming the subconscious mind. That's essentially what you're doing. When you method act, you're doing what we do in hypnotherapy, only what you're doing is you're using method acting to re-traumatize yourself to get real tears in a scene or to be able to display negative emotions on stage. You're actually recreating. That's why they're such beautiful performances, because they're real. While hypnotherapy, I will say, does the exact opposite, right? It uses the power of the subconscious mind to access those positive emotions that you want to feel more of the time. But when you practice that and you reprogram your brain, you feel those emotions more of the time. So when you're that method actor and you've been practicing for your show 8 times a week to feel these negative emotions very viscerally and programming your brain to do that, no wonder you feel depressed and alcoholic and wanting to numb yourself in these emotions. You can't escape the brain you've created. Your brain doesn't know that it's fake. Ooh, it gives me shivers to think about. But that was what I had learned, okay? And I hope the world can recognize how dangerous this is over time. But anyways, that's like a separate rant. Okay? They're both two totally different uses of a very similar process, though. And it's crazy that I did both, which was insane. I had no clue that method acting was a form of hypnosis while I was an 18-year-old studying it at NYU, right? I just knew that I relived my negative memories and they felt very real to me. And then I would get applause on stage for showing them. Like, that's all I recognized. It wasn't until I learned about hypnosis that I realized that when something feels real in your inner world, It becomes real to your brain. Your brain does not know the difference, but it also becomes real in your outer world too. Which is why when we're in a state of hypnosis and we practice states of joy and gratitude and acceptance and love and peace in the state of hypnosis, we begin to rewire our brain to experience these emotions more of the time. Happy hypnotherapy people, sad method actors, same process. So, looking back at it, I can see some things along that journey, right? As well as the journey of my clients that I've coached and helped through hypnosis on this. I noticed some things that can help you tune in to this deeper purpose within you. And so let's cover them, okay? The first one, do a bunch of things and notice what clicks. Okay? You have to put yourself out there and do new things. If something piques your interest or you think, oh, that might be cool, do it. Give it a go. Go there, try it, do it, learn about it. Put yourself out there just for the experience of it. It might be nothing, or it might be something. It might inspire the next idea. Even if that didn't give you any information, it might lead you to the next path. But your life purpose, just like a soulmate, probably won't find you if you're just sitting on the couch, binging the latest season of Top Chef. That's what my husband and I just did. But I've already found my life purpose, so now I get to binge shows. If you want to find your life purpose, though, probably not the best way unless you want to become a chef, then maybe that's a great way to do it. Okay? But even then, eventually, you're gonna need to get into the kitchen and cook something, right? Here's another one. Have you ever heard of a glimmer? I can't recall if I've talked about this on the podcast before. A glimmer is the opposite of a trigger. So we've heard of like, oh, this is triggering to me, right? Folks that have PTSD might have triggers that set off certain reactions, right? Glimmers are the opposite. So glimmers are the opposite of triggers in that they're small moments that spark the opposite emotions of triggers. So they spark joy, they spark peace, they spark safety, right? Glimmers, I guess, are what Marie Kondo was talking about, right? She was all about those glimmers. So as opposed to triggers, a glimmer will have a positive impact on your mental health and your well-being. Just like method acting makes for sad, psychologically disturbed actors, hypnotherapy makes for happy, joyful, healed people. Okay, yay, there's a happy ending here. And so I want you to notice the glimmers in your life. Ooh, enjoy them. My glimmers with being a guide is getting messages, DMs, emails, hearing those testimonials from you guys telling me about your experience after doing a one-on-one session with me. Or like my newest clients in my group program right now, I'm getting all these messages about how much they love the lessons and the workbooks and the hypnosis audios that's part of this program, right? It's that feeling that I get during a one-on-one hypnotherapy session where I get full body goosebumps and I can tell that just something has just shifted, something has clicked for my client. And it's like, yay, I got to witness that. It's the coolest thing ever. It's those moments when a friend reaches out for a second opinion about something going on in her life because she knows I'm not going to bullshit her, right? Like she knows I can go into coach mode for her if she wants that. It's being a guide. It's being of service. It's not that I have all the answers. Like, oh my Lord, please. Like I always say, you are the expert of your life, right? It's just that I find purpose in helping people find the answers within themselves. That's the skill. And I'll just say this. First of all, glimmers just feel good. To recognize them, to have gratitude for them just feels good. The more that you notice them, the more you'll receive. It's those small moments that make life so sweet. And what makes them extra special is that they're aligned to your purpose. Okay? They're sort of like those, do you remember those bumpers that maybe you used to use as a kid when you went bowling? Or maybe you still use them. I know if they're up, I'm not complaining. I'll use them. Those bumpers, they help you stay in your alignment lane. That's what the glimmers do. They help you keep in your lane. So next time you experience one of those glimmers, ask yourself, how can I amplify and magnify this feeling? How can I create more of these small moments just like this, but I can ladder them into bigger moments? How can I experience more of these glimmers in a more fulfilling, bigger, and more consistent ways? Now, for me, it wasn't enough to just coach my friends and teach my friends about what I learned about manifestation. Okay, I wanted to do it on a wider scale. I wanted to feel that feeling all day, every day. So I became a hypnotherapist and coach. Now, It isn't my job that is my purpose, but my job allows me to live my purpose more of the time. You see that distinction? It could be any kind of job. What allows you to live your purpose for more hours of that day? Now, here's another thing that will point you towards your purpose, okay? Are you ready? And it's annoying. I'm going to warn you, but it's true. So I'm going to include it. When you know, you know. Now, I remember my mom told me this piece of advice when it came to my soulmate. Okay. I remember I'd be like, oh, am I going to marry? Like, who am I going to marry? When am I going to meet the man of my dreams? Right. I was such a romantic as a high schooler and as a college age girl. Right. And she would tell me, when you meet the right boy, Brittany, you'll just know. And I thought she was wrong for the longest time. I'm like, I met all these boys. I didn't know nothing. None of these were ringing my bell, right? Until I met my current husband. And there was just this almost instant internal knowing. I don't know if that applies to everybody, but for me, it was nearly instant. Okay. I'm not kidding. It was love at, well, I can't say first sight. It was love at second sight. And I will say it wasn't first sight because I was really busy and distracted the day that I actually met him. So I'm going to give myself some grace, okay? But it was love at second sight. And I knew he'd be my husband before he even asked me out on a date, okay? I called him husband as a code name to my girlfriends before he had even expressed any interest in me. Like, thank God. I was a little stalkery. Thank God he loved me, okay? When you know, you know. Which is another way of saying be open to your intuition. Listen to it. If you aren't feeling it, that means it isn't it. It just means that you need to go out there and explore a little bit more. You need to go on some more purpose dates, okay? You need to date around a little bit with other purposes. It's kind of like playing Guess Who, you know? Each thing that you try, each quality you embody, if it's not it, you can just push down that little window thing, right? And the game board. You can rule that out and you keep going. Because in that process of dating various purposes, your purpose will find you. Now, here's another thing to remember, okay? Some people are hummingbirds, and that's okay. Now, let me explain myself. There's only one time in my life that I seriously considered getting a tattoo, and it was of a hummingbird, and here's why. So I would say about 6 to 7 years ago, after I was lamenting to one of my girlfriends about how exhausted I was at starting businesses and then closing them and starting businesses and closing them. And I was just a chronic, starter and doing everything I could to find my purpose, but continually coming up short. My friend sent me this YouTube video of this absolutely transformational speech that was given by Elizabeth Gilbert. She's the author of Eat, Pray, Love. I love her. And Big Magic, I think. Yeah, I think I've read both those books. I'll try to see if I can find the YouTube video online and I'll link it if I can. But the premise of her speech is that some of us know what we want to do with our lives and who we want to be, and we lock in and we do it. But others of us like to flit around like beautiful hummingbirds, okay? We just go from one thing to the next, and that's okay too. And just to hear that and to have that permission slip and to hear from someone who is successful, she wasn't even that way, but she knew a lot of hummingbirds. But to hear her say so beautifully and so eloquently that that was okay, I think it was the first time I had ever heard somebody successful, someone who I admired, say that what I had done and how I had lived my life up to that point was okay. And I had taken on such a sense of failure for trying out all these different hobbies and all these different side hustles, thinking that I had to lock into one thing. And I had built up so much shame around that. And the fact that I'd done that was such a shame because it was so much unnecessary suffering. I want you to hear me. It's okay to be a hummingbird. It's okay to flit from one thing to the next. Right now, I feel like being a hypnotherapist. I feel like being a hypnotherapist until I croak out my final session on my dying breath, okay? But I am completely open and accepting now of the fact that I may completely change my mind a year from now, and I might open up a bakery. Maybe I watch one too many episodes of Top Chef. Maybe I decided to go to culinary school. I don't currently bake or even eat sugar, so that I would be just as surprised as you are. But it could happen, and I'm not closing that door anymore, and I'm not judging myself for if I want to change. That's to say that I don't judge that or think that it's bad anymore. And I hope you don't either. I created so much of my own suffering and strife throughout my whole 20s, starting businesses, doing hobbies, passions, etc., putting myself out there to find my purpose and coming up short, and then beating myself up internally when it wasn't it and I wanted to switch to something else. Again, if it's not a hell yes, move on to something else. You're wasting your time. It's not your purpose. And know that it's okay. This episode is your official permission slip, okay? Let me write it out for you. I'll sign it. Give it to the teacher. It doesn't mean that you're less successful or capable than anyone else. Trust me, that is true. It's okay. Also, I feel like I have to throw this in. I know that this type of exploration is often common with folks that have ADHD. Now, I will say I have not been formally diagnosed with ADHD, but I can empathize with many of the qualities and the tendencies, and I work with a lot of clients who have ADHD. So I know with ADHD that there can be a tendency to start projects and then not finish them, okay? And there could be an internal beating yourself up for not finishing and feeling like you should have, right? But you just can't. And then it just kind of becomes this vicious cycle. But I will say this. I've noticed a common thread between folks like myself and folks with ADHD, and it might resonate with you too. A lot of times why we don't finish things is because we're following our curiosity. Now, some people receive a hit of dopamine when they finish a project or when they reach a goal. Yay, it's done. I feel good. Great. Then on to the next thing. But folks with ADHD receive that dopamine hit through following their curiosity. So once that itch is scratched, so to speak, with that hobby or with that project, then there's no need to continue. They've gotten the dopamine. They're good. They've explored that to the extent that they've wanted to. And unless you are motivating yourself by fear or by punishment, which we know those both are not unhealthy, usually some of these other things may not get done. So, first of all, I just want to say it's beautiful to recognize this, right? If this resonates with you. But secondly, if it does seem to make some things clearer for you, if you think about it this way, my question to you now becomes, how can you begin to pique your own curiosity with some of these projects that you want to finish? Just because your initial sort of burst of curiosity has been satisfied, that doesn't mean that there's not anything else to explore there. So aren't you curious to see what it might be like to finish this particular project? I'd be curious. What you might learn that you couldn't even expect or anticipate right now that still exists in that project. Isn't that kind of like a treasure hunt that might be interesting to go on? What could happen if you took the next step on that project that you had previously abandoned? If you apply your desire for curiosity back into the project, see what else you can milk out of it, curiosity-wise. Because just because you started doesn't mean that there isn't more curious things to explore there, right? What more can you learn? Go and find it. Here's another life purpose tenet that I talked about briefly before, okay? Allow the definition to be broad. The broader, the better, I think. Now, you'll notice how my life purpose is not that I'm a hypnotherapist or even that I'm a mom, even though I know that's a big calling on my heart, but it's just that I'm a guide. There are so many different ways to guide. So I want you to ask yourself, what's the bigger picture, the bigger calling in my life? Where are the patterns and themes in multiple areas of your life where your purpose can still apply? Because the more that you apply your purpose throughout your life, the more joy you'll feel on a daily basis. We're not limiting that alignment to 8 hours of a day that you might be working or more, right? We're finding it in all different areas, multiple times a day. All right, so let's recap here what we learned, okay? Put yourself out there and let it find you while you're just out having fun and exploring, right? Pursue the glimmers. When you know, you'll know. It's okay to be a hummingbird. Keep your definitions broad and your curiosity piqued. And one last thought here before we wrap this up, okay? Here's the interesting thing. Can your life's purpose change? Now, to tell you the truth, I can't really answer that question quite yet. Ask me in 70 years. Maybe even more. Maybe we'll figure out how to last even longer by then. I know that I found it now. And even if the actions I do change, I still do believe that my purpose will be rooted in guidance in some sort of way. But I also have learned enough to know to never say never and to know that it's all okay. We are all just trying to figure out this thing called life, right? There's no right or wrongs. There's just what feels good. So be open, be willing, know what you know now, and allow the unknown to become more and more known to you. And just be kind with yourself. There's no right or wrong. There's just life. So why not create a life that feels better to you more of the time? Okay, why not enjoy it? So I hope this was helpful for you. I just want to thank you, travelers, for joining us here today on this journey towards destination manifestation, where your purpose lives. You are absolutely amazing, and I can't wait for you to embrace your purpose and to live it fully. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and if you've learned something interesting about how you might be able to find your life's purpose, show the podcast some love by writing a review. Okay, reviews help other people find the show. Can you imagine the people who might be finding their purpose because of this show? And I'm a big believer that the good energy that you put out in the world comes back to you bigger and more fully and more beautiful than ever, okay? It's karma, right? And I also promised you guys that I would feature some of you guys' reviews every couple months, okay? And so today, I want to feature a review from Jelly465. Do you like peanut butter with that, Jelly? I hope so. Here's what Jelly says. Captivating and inspiring. Brittany has a way to get to the heart and soul of what's keeping us from reaching our true potential. A visionary storyteller. I don't know if I'd say that, but thank you. Who weaves a bigger picture with human and truth and absolutely opens my eyes. Can't stop listening over and over and picking up new things each time to help me be able to heal and manifest my new dreams from myself. Love Brittany and love this podcast. Please listen. Jelly, thank you. That was one of the sweetest things ever. Thank you so much. It means the world to me to hear what resonates with you guys, so I can continue creating episodes that begin to shift your life, right? So go ahead, leave a review for the show. I think you can leave just stars on Spotify if you're listening there. And I think you can write a review on Apple Podcasts. And maybe you'll hear your shout out in an upcoming episode. Who knows? All music for this podcast is by A Cubed. And remember, when you're focusing on what is glimmering in your life, just stay there a little longer. That's all you need to do. It might be exactly where your purpose lives. I'll catch you next time.
Always